One question I get asked rather a lot is, why do I suck at playing games, or a variation thereof? Why can't you aim? Why do you take so long to solve puzzles? And how is it you manage to miss the most obvious things all the time? Now, some people have even suggested that I do this deliberately, that nobody could be as stupid as Gopher seems to act, and that he's doing it for the views. He knows being incompetent gets people watching, therefore he's doing it. This, of course, is complete manure. I do no such thing. However, somebody asked a variation of that sort of a question in a way that was actually very polite, and I'm going to read it to you now. I don't understand how absolutely none of the skill you've demonstrated in Payday 2 and in Borderlands 2, when you actually use a sniper rifle, translate to this game. The simple act of aiming doesn't change a whole lot between shooters, and you seem to have no trigger discipline at all in Prey. He goes on later on to say, I'm trying to figure out why you're so clean in one or two games and so sloppy in a lot of others. And obviously this is a pretty polite way of saying, look, you're really good in some games and then you suck in other games. How? I don't see how that is a thing, because, FPS games are FPS games. They're pretty much the same thing. As he said, the simple act of aiming doesn't change a whole lot between shooters. Right. Well, the answer to your question my response to that last statement is, you're actually wrong. The simple act of aiming does change a whole lot between shooters. But you're not totally wrong, because that doesn't explain it in its entirety. It's partly about the difference in shooters, and it's also partly the difference in what I am doing. Now, when I say you're wrong about FPS games being the same, I do understand that FPS games all share a lot of similarities. You can move forward, backwards, left, right, and aiming is pretty much the process of turning the mouse until you're looking at something, aiming down the sights usually, and then pulling the trigger. The concept is similar. But that's kind of like saying tap dancing and twerking are the same because they're both dancing. You move your body in time with the music, right? Well, yes, but no. It's not really the same thing. Even things like how you move in an FPS game affect how you aim. Do you have momentum? Do you have the same speed of movement strafing? Plus, when you aim, does it change your field of view? Does it slow down your turning? You'll notice here, I can turn quite quickly. If I do the same hand movement with aiming down the sights, it's reduced my aim. That does make you more accurate, but it actually requires bigger movements now, and it's not actually something I'm comfortable with. If you then check out sniper rifles, you get the added complication of different games handle zooming through scopes differently. In fact, they actually handle zooming normally differently. This game, Fallout 4, is actually quite sluggish at aiming. But when you use scopes, that is amplified. Look how slow that is. It's probably very realistic, but there are games out there where you literally aim and a tenth of a second, 100th of a second later, you've zoomed in and you can sort of zoom in, fire, and oh my god, that's slow. You can zoom in like that, fire, and the sight has closed before the sound of the shot has finished ringing. You can't do that with this, I think. I mean, if I try to... No, it actually delays the zoom out. You cannot quick scope in Fallout 4. And that makes a huge difference to someone like me. For an FPS game, comfort is everything. It's all about how the game feels. However, as I said, you're not completely wrong. And as I replied to you in the comment section, it's actually the way I set my games up for Let's Plays that makes the biggest difference. And I realise that might be somewhat confusing. I mean, why would I change the way I play for Let's Plays? Well, there are a hell of a lot of reasons, and there are actually a hell of a lot of ways in which I change the setup. Before I go any further, I feel the need to give a warning to any hardcore FPS gamers out there. What you are about to hear is going to upset you, it may offend you, and it could even cause you vague feelings of nausea and pain. You have been warned. When playing games for myself, what I will generally do is uncap the frame rate and play with VSync turned off. This can introduce screen tearing and thus is a little less pleasant to look at, but it does make the game a lot more responsive, and that's how I play things like Payday 2. When I Let's Play, I cap it at 60 frames a second and I use VSync to make the experience for the viewer far superior. Plus, because I'm trying to focus on quality, I do not clone the screens when I record Let's Plays. What I do is I use a single video feed into the recording box, and then I have the feed come out of that. And there is a bit of pass-through lag. It's only about a 60th of a second, but it's still there. And if you add that to the sort of lag you get with VSync, it is noticeably sluggish when compared to how I would normally play. I can feel the difference. Now, things like this are the icing on the cake. They only make a small difference, although again, if you speak to hardcore FPS gamers, it's those small differences that mean the difference between a win and a loss. It's the difference between being in the zone and just not being quite with it that particular day. However, there are some fairly major things that change when I Let's Play that actually make more difference, and I'm going to start with simple things such as mouse sensitivity. When I first started making Let's Play videos, one of the complaints I received fairly frequently was that my mouse movement was too fast and twitchy. I'd be turning around and I'd be looking constantly around, as you do when you play games. You constantly look around, and my turning was very sharp and generally speaking kind of difficult to look at. Now I'm trying to make it a little smoother now, but you might notice it's a little more ragged than normal, and that's because I've cranked the mouse sensitivity back up to what would be a more comfortable level for me to play at. This is a sensitivity where I can quite simply move my hand about half an inch and do a 180 degree turn like that. This means I can make very quick shifts in my aim. I can make very accurate changes to my aim with very small movements of my hand. I can actually just twitch very, very quickly backwards and forwards without moving my hand very much. I'm just sort of moving the fingers, the palm a slight amount. Back in my Skyrim days, this was especially nauseating for people to watch because, of course, I would be constantly scanning the road side to side looking for bushes, and those rapid mouse movements made it very, very difficult for people to watch. Myself included, actually. When I edited the video, I found it a little nauseating. So I ended up changing the mouse sensitivity quite a lot. This made it so that when I moved around, I could make much smoother movements with the mouse. This makes the camera work a lot better for people to view. I can even constantly scan side to side without having to worry too much about keeping it under control. It's generally quite pleasant to watch. It does mean I can't do 180s. I try to do a 180. I have to pick my arm up and replace the mouse. Now, for a lot of FPS gamers, they're actually in physical pain now. I mean, I'm having to pick up the mouse a few times to turn all the way around. And of course, this does affect my aim. It means when I'm aiming between, small gaps, I'm reasonably accurate. But if I'm trying to shoot from someone over there and someone over there whilst aiming, I've really got to move my entire arm. I'm kind of swinging my hand now to try and get these big movements. I'm moving my entire arm from the elbow, and I can do that. There's nothing that stops me from doing that, but I'm not remotely as accurate when I move my entire hand and arm to aim as I am when I crank up the sensitivity and just move with my fingers. That's the thing with aiming. Aiming requires accuracy and speed. And I just don't have that when I drop the sensitivity as I have done. And one last thing is the way I approach these games is different. When I play Fallout 4, I play the character. I played Frank. I cared about what's going on. I'm invested in the world. And I often get stressed. I often get angry or upset. I sometimes hesitate when I shouldn't because I'm not totally sure I want to shoot the person I'm aiming at. Are they really an enemy? I have all of these human conflicts that actually affect us when we're in real life. I'm going to use the dreaded I word, I'm immersed. When I play Payday 2, not so much. I'm treating it as a game, I'm playing it as a game, and I'm playing to win. All of the people I shoot, whether they're civilians or policemen, they're just numbers. I shoot them in the head, I get a better score. It's pretty much as simple as that. I'm in a totally different mental place, and I'm far more effective at winning the game, because that's the aim. When I let's play, let's face it, the aim is not to win. The aim is to experience the story, experience the world, to become the character. So in summary, there are basically 3 real reasons why my skill level between these games seems so different. The first reason is the games are different. They have a very different feel when you engage in the gunplay, and Payday 2 definitely matches my skill set more than Fallout 4. The setup I use is radically different for a Let's Play than it is for a normal playing experience for myself. And finally, I approach the games in a very different way. Now, I could change these things. I could try and use a better setup for Fallout 4, and I could try to detach from the character and become a more efficient fighting machine. But I wouldn't enjoy games like Fallout 4 as much as I do if I did that. I don't play those games to win. I don't play them to be the best fighting machine I can possibly be. And that should be obvious if you think about the builds I use. I quite often take the wrong builds. I take skills that don't necessarily make me as strong as I could be. I don't use items that make me as strong as I could be. I sometimes go completely stupid with the decisions I make in the character build process in loads of these games, because I go with what is fun, I go with what suits the character, and I'm playing for that reason. When I play something like Payday 2, I pick the best skills. I pick the skills that fit my game style, my play style the best, and I become the most effective game player that I can. And that's it.